Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
But at any one time, they will have a program on record that, when completed, would result in either the master's degree, the doctorate degree, or the postdoctorate degree. And one of our fastest-growing sections are MDs and PhD psychologists and PhD nurses who have their doctorate, but they want to get a degree in spirituality and health, and our degree is a Doctor of Theology, which gives them legitimacy to bring spirit into their work. And we're delighted with that development.
And that's part of the postdoc work, or is that a separate doctorate you're talking about?
Well, there are two kinds of postdocs. We have the same as most postdocs, which are just you do some additional work after you get the doctorate, and then you get a certificate that says you've done this work.
Right.
And we have that, but what I was talking about is what we call our postdoc degree, and they actually get an earned Doctor of Theology degree in spirituality and health. So they have, at that point, two doctorates.
Dr. Ann, you two have a very rich and talented history. Please share with our audience a little bit about yourself and then your role at Holos University.
Okay. My background, I'll do this as quickly as I can. I grew up in the middle of Kansas, in the wheat fields, and my interests were not well addressed there. It was hard to find somebody to talk with in that area those many years ago because I'm in my early 70s, and so that was quite a while back. And to find somebody who knew something about all the various forms of spirituality was difficult, and yet that was a very strong interest of mine from a very early age, and so that was interesting growing up in that small community. In high school, I was advised that I probably ought to study psychology, become a counselor, a psychologist, and I just said I can't do that because there isn't anything right now that I can see that would be an approach I would want to take. It would just break my heart to work with people and not have tools and an approach that I feel is positive and really helpful. And at that time, there just wasn't much, certainly not in the area where I lived. And so what I did was go to the University of Kansas and study art, and I became a silversmith and then a painter. And it was really my journey in painting that brought me back into the field of psychology, into introspective studies and understanding the things you were talking about at the beginning of the program, Eldon, about what it is we need to know about ourselves. We need to know how we fit into this universe. That's our greatest curiosity. Who are we? And so that took me in that area, and it all kind of just flowered out from there. Bob and I met, we're in our 50th year of marriage.
Well,
so we met quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And so but we met at a very spiritual level, and the first book that we shared together was the poetry of Khalil Gibran.
Oh.
So that's my background, and that took me into my studies and my discovery of the basic core of this process that I now teach called the inner counselor, and that's been my passion for the last 20-some years.
Now, you're actually the founding provost of Holos University. What attracted you to the idea of developing a whole new university, a whole new school?
Well, that's interesting because Bob and I have been interested in education for a very long time, and we really haven't felt that it's been the creative kind of education that's possible, the thing that would bring out people's greatest potentials, would, as Bob was speaking, bring out their passion, engage them, and in a full, it's interesting, I was going to talk about, and I will talk about Robert Bly's book where he talks about the long bag, and one of the statements he makes is he says, well, when we're born, we have a full 360 degrees of creative energy.
Yeah.
And then as we begin to go through life, we find out that there's pieces of that aren't acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we take that piece that's not acceptable and we put it away in this long bag that we drag behind us. And the bag gets fuller and fuller, and we find out that, well, no, we shouldn't paint. We can't paint because somebody, when we were very small and impressionable, came along and said, oh, what is that? That doesn't look like a tree, or something that just really upset us. And so there's so many of us out there who say, I can't paint, I can't sing, I can't. So these pieces of ourselves that get shut down and get put in this long bag are the pieces that I'm passionate about having education help reawaken in us.
I mean, that is admirable. I share your passion. I totally relate to the long bag. I think of that as the no-don't syndrome that we're all socialized with. You're not old enough. You're too stupid. You'll never amount to anything. You're
and
not good at
lies,
this.
You know?
It is indeed all lies. All right, we have a hard break coming up on us. I've got another question for you, though. So right after the break, we'll come right back to Dr. Ann Nunley with one more question before we get Dr. Curtis in here and ask her about her dissertation where she looked at mediums and actually the data didn't support that there was anything statistically meaningful there. But that's another story. We're speaking with three exceptional people from Holos University. Be sure and get in our chat room now. Take a look at the film. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss what's coming up after these words from some of our friends. And welcome back. If you just joined us, we're speaking with three wonderful people from Holos University. All right, now back to today's show. Before the break, we were speaking with Dr. Ann Nunley, and I promised that I had one more question for her, and it's really the big one, Dr. Ann. There are a lot of alternative educational, distance learning kinds of schools out there, and many of them today offer diplomas or degrees in spiritual areas, metaphysics to spiritual coaching. Tell me what makes Holos University special.
That's an interesting question. I think there are several things that make it special. One of the things that makes it special is that we've continued to maintain the idea that there are a few of our courses that require hands-on training. So we have our once a year now, a time at Unity Village where we have our courses that require hands-on, have 3 days to 1 to 3 days with the students in the class to really interact in that very personal way. I require that for the counselor process. I could not teach that totally distance. Although once I've had 3 days with people, then it works very, very well. That's an unusual thing. The other is that I would say that our faculty are very personally involved with the students in terms of caring about how the student is progressing. And so they get involved at that level. The other one is that we have such a wonderful blend of the idea that it's important to bridge the two approaches to things, the very intuitive, very spiritual approach with the world that we live in, the scientific world. And that's the reason that we put so much emphasis on the master's thesis and projects and on the dissertations, because that's where our students learn to gain the skills and ways of thinking that allows them to bridge those two worlds. Many of our students who come in are highly intuitive people, and some of them are quite psychic. And so, but they have a little lack maybe on the side of scholarship or on the side of how to write a scholarly paper or how to do a dissertation research, or how to even read the research that's out there on the various topics. And those are the things that we that we emphasize that I think are very important is this wonderful balance. It's not just learning about spirituality or reading spiritual literature. It's learning to write, learning to do research on these topics. And I guess that would be the answer to that question.
Well, I think that's a wonderful answer. You touched the bases that I would, as in baseball bases, that I would think are the most important. Indeed, if my opinion means anything, and I think I've got an idea of what the alternatives are out there. I've talked to lots of people. You have the premier university of kind, and I know of no one that is even thinking about going for regional accreditation. So you're not just preeminent, in my view, today, but it appears that you will be, heads and shoulders above everybody in the future.